These 8 openings are played in well under 1% of games, but every single one is still very strong and will help you win games. First 4 are for white and last 4 are for black. Alright, starting off I have the birds opening, which is on the first move, not e4 and not d4, but pawn to f4, and a lot of people, especially beginners, think this opening is bad because 99% of people who play this are beginners themselves and are, to be completely honest, just idiots. They don't know what they're doing, and so a lot of people try to trick them. Like pawn to e5 is a super common trick here. You do have to be wary about this one variation because a lot of people will just like capture and then some check happens, they just block, bishop e7, and captures, and they are checkmated on move 4. That's a very common opening trap, but there's actually a lot of cases like that on this dangerous f-file. That's the only thing you really need to worry about though, and this whole gambit, by the way, pawn to e5, the From's Gambit, which so many beginners try to use to trick up this opening, is not actually that good. In fact, it's really easy to beat. Very simply here, just capture the pawn. And the thing is, nobody actually knows how to play this from here. Like, d6 is the main line, captures, knight to f3, you're up a pawn, and your knight's out, you're pretty much safe, and black doesn't have any actual attack. The only thing that's even remotely scary here is g5, trying to go g4, get some action, but simply g3. And everything's defended. I mean, they can push, just move your knight over. It's going to rotate back to g2 and everything is completely safe and you're just up a pawn. So already the most scary weapon against this that basically everybody at beginner level tries to get away with, this pawn to e5, doesn't even work. It's not good. You're already just going to win a pawn for free. But the majority of games will not go like that. They'll go something else. Let's say black here plays a normal move, but this applies for literally anything else. That's partly why this opening is so strong, because you can play it against just about everything. If they play e6, d6, knight f6, knight 6, whatever, this is how you'll play. First, move the knight out to f3, and the core idea behind f4 here is you control e5, which you are just going to, very simply, it's extremely simple, just keep defending it. Now you defend it with your knight. What's next? Defend it with another piece. You can play b3 here and bishop b2, and, oh, very good. Now you have 3 pieces controlling that, and what you're going to do is you are just going to get a complete domination over that square to the point where black can just not compete in like any way at whatsoever. Let's say go bishop e7. Here you can go e3, black castles. Let's say you move your bishop out to b5. The reason to move out here, you can also move it to like e2, but this is the best square because you can trade off for this knight, which controls the e5 square. Hence, after like d6 here and this trade, well, now you control it even more. You have 3 defenders here, and black only has 1 measly attacker. And from this point, you already have a fantastic position. Engine gives about equal. I would take white's position any day, because what you're going to do here is you have a very simple plan already, by the way. Black's position is like extremely tight, and this is just terrible. The plan here is so simple. Castle, move the knight out, probably to g5, move your queen in, and start attacking. You can move your rook in as well, and everybody's going to come over to that king side. The bishop all the way across the board also aims at the king, and yeah, you're just going to go on a complete rampage. Black cannot survive, and this opening is insanely underrated. Next up, I have the Blackmar-Diemer Gambit, and there's actually 2 ways of getting to this one. The like official way is pawn d4, black goes pawn d5, you get a queen's pawn, and then e4 here, sacrificing the e-pawn like so. The other option that may be a lot more useful to you if you are an e4 player is if black goes d5, the Scandinavian, then in this case you play d4, and when you look at that, it transposes into the exact same position. Now, from here, how do you actually play this gambit and why is it good? Well, the reason it is good is because it gives you an extremely simple way to play and a very, very clear plan as well. So here, let's say black captures your pawn, which everybody does. They can like not accept it, like they can play e6, which goes to a French defense, or c6 and go into a Caracon. This is just good for you, like trade, and yeah, you just have a good position. Most people are just going to capture though, and here's what you do. First, knight c3. Just go ahead, attack the pawn. Black just doesn't just want to give their one pawn away advantage for nothing. So knight to f6 is what they're probably going to play. Defend like so. And now f3 here. Offer a trade, and you're threatening to win the pawn, so they basically have to accept. And now you take back with the knight. I do want to note here, they can also try taking with the queen, or you can also try taking the queen, which is the Rider Gambit. You sacrifice a second pawn. In my opinion, this is a little bit too crazy, but if you do want to go for this, there is, of course, the famous Halisar trap, which I'll show you real quick just for fun. Bishop b3, you attack the queen, queen moves over, and this is also how you play this gambit, like, as a whole. You long castle here, take control of the open file, and if black goes bishop g4, skewering your queen and rook, it looks like you've blundered, but no, because knight to b5, attacking c7, you sacrifice the queen, you take the pawn, and you have a surprise checkmate. Yeah, that's one super fun trap you can beat black with. There's actually a second trap that's not from this more dangerous Rider Gambit where you sacrifice the second pawn, but from the main variation, knight takes on f3. What you do here is, well, first, black is just going to want to develop. Bishop f5 is what basically everyone plays here, or something very similar. And your plan is, like, it's so simple. Just move your pieces. Bishop c4. Black now plays pawn e6, preparing to move their bishop, just castle. And here is where the trap comes. Black goes like pawn to c6 here. The move you play here is knight e5. It doesn't even look like this threatens anything. Your rook opens up on the bishop, but it's defended by the pawn. Your knight attacks f7, but like nothing else is attacking it right. But no, the black is actually losing here. The vast majority of people just play bishop e7. Just looks like a normal move. It is a blunder because rook takes f5. Great sacrifice. Sacrificing the rook because after pawn takes back, well, now the bishop opens up in f7, and yeah, knight takes. Black is getting forked, and they're going to have to work a miracle to get out of this position alive. And even if they don't fall for that trap, which the move did not fall for it, by the way, is bishop g6, which is just such an unnatural move. Anyone who does not know about the trap is not going to play that move ever. But if they do, once again, you're playing it simple. Bishop g5. Keep developing. You eventually want to move your queen out, likely to e2, f3, get your other rook in as well, and you're going to have a very good game here. Your biggest weakness in this position you need to pay attention to is the d4 pawn. It is only defended by your queen right now, and also there's the check on your king that can get dangerous, but if you can eventually orchestrate a knight drops back to e2 and pawn to c3 pawn push to get that defended, well, you're going to be doing golden, and yeah, just be doing absolutely fantastic. Next up, I have a really controversial one. This is pawn to g4, the Grob opening. A lot of people call this like the worst opening in chess. They just call it that because they haven't seen all the other openings chess. There are many, like hundreds of openings way worse than this, but there's actually a lot of hidden venom in this opening. Well, where is it, you're probably asking? This looks like a terrible move. Well, the idea here is, there's actually a lot of ideas. Let's take a look at this one first. Let's say Grob Gambit. Black goes pawn to d5, and black attacks the pawn. The idea here is we just let them have the pawn, and this is in a lot of variations of this opening. Don't defend it, just bishop b2. And counterattack d5. The point is, let's say black captures here, and you go, they can also not capture, like pawn to e5, but this is just fine. h3, defend the pawn, you're doing all good. If they do take, which most people will, then now c4. And now you can already see how we're actually generating a pretty good amount of counterplay. You attack the pawn. What if black captures? Well, then bishop takes b7. That rook is trapped in the corner, and black doesn't just want to have to lose that exchange for no reason. So instead, what is black going to do here? They're not going to capture. They're going to try to defend in some way. The most common way of doing that actually leads to a mistake. Let's say black here goes c6. Just trying to defend the pawn. Now you play queen b3, and you can see how things are getting very dangerous already. You attack b7, you attack d5 here, and black is actually going to have to lose a pawn. This is a fork, and they cannot defend both. The most common way this goes down is now like, I don't know, pawn to e6 here, and you take b7, you capture, or you attack that rook in the corner, knight has to move, you take another pawn. At this point, now you're the one up pawn, and yeah, it is kind of dangerous, but you're going to go knight out, probably pawn d4, pawn e3, and you're actually going to be just completely safe here, but there are many good ways of playing. And if we go back, all those ideas with queen b3, by the way, are very dangerous. A lot of people will fall for those tricks. The other idea here is if black, let's say, doesn't try, let's say they go e5 and they don't go for the pawn, then your idea is actually like kind of the exact same you set up, bishop g2. Black can go d6 here, attack the pawn. You can also here just try to let them gambit again. You can go d4, strike in the center like so. Some people will capture it, but most people in this position won't. They'll play like c6, at which point your plan is just good. You go h3, defend the pawn. Now it's no longer a liability, and black's position here is surprisingly tight and annoying. You can go e4, and it looks insane, but now you're the one who's taking all of this space in the center, and after like knight f6, you can go knight c3. And your position is strong. You can move your bishop out to e3, probably your queen up to d2. You can castle long here. You can castle short, engine like short the most here, which I personally think might be a little bit too crazy with this. But hey, if you want to go for it, that's what the engine thinks is best, and you actually have a lot of super fun attacking ideas. And lastly, for the white pieces, I have the Grob's much more respectable cousin, the Polish or the orangutan, with pawn up to b4. And the ideas here are actually a lot different from the Grob. They're kind of similar, but the fact that it is on the other side of the board makes the opening a lot stronger, objectively speaking. First off, let's say white or black tries pawn to e5. They try to attack the pawn. You do the same thing, but the difference is this time you're actually just going to win the pawn back, so it's not really even a gambit. Bishop takes, bishop takes. This is an even material game, and black has lost their central pawn, where you've only lost your flank pawn. So this is better for you. And after knight to f6, because you're going to take the pawn and b7 and win the rook, you have various ways of playing here. The simplest setup is just, it's super easy to play though, and it's probably the strongest as well. Just go pawn to e3. Black will try to move the pawns in the center and just get castled, probably. Knight to f3. Black goes here, probably bishop e2. You have various good ways of playing this. Let's say c6 now, you castle, and let's say they attack your bishop, just back it up to b2. No problems here whatsoever, and black is kind of like, their position is, what do I do? What does black really do here? Your position is unbelievably solid. They have no breaking through points, they have no hooks, they have nothing. So what do? Probably just crumble under their own pressure. Let's go queen c7 here. You can now play c4. You're going to launch your queen out to b3. You're going to play pawn to d4, knight out to c3. You're doing great here. A super easy and surprisingly fun to play position. Also surprisingly objectively very good. I think even in the absolute worst cases, this is still equality at least. And the other options here, instead of e5, they have various, d5s, e5s, blank, blank, blobbity blank. It's basically the same thing. Like d5 here, you can just go bishop b2. Now this is just a very annoying pressure, knight f6 maybe, and you can always just play a3, keep that pawn defended, and your plans are very similar. Go e3, eventually plan a c4 and d4 pawn excursion, and just take over literally the entire queen side, and yeah, you're just dominating here. Polish is super strong. Alright, first opening with the black pieces, I have the Latvian Gambit, which comes after white goes pawn to e4, you respond pawn to e5, knight to f3, attacking your pawn, and now, not defending, not knight out, not d6, none of this, f5. Latvian Gambit. Attacking the pawn right away, and these positions get really aggressive. First off, what can white do here? Any defending variation like d3 or knight c6, knight c3 is just bad. Very simply here, knight c6, get that pawn defended, and your position is super easy. Let's say they capture now, d5. Yeah, let a bishop b2, you're just going to win the pawn. Knight f6, queen out, long castle. You're just going to be completely dominating there. And knight c3 is the exact same story. Knight c3, captures, d5. This completely sucks for them. So what else can they try? They can try accepting the gambit with either pawn takes or knight takes. Let's look at pawn takes first. Pawn takes, what your response is, your opponent can now push up, so you do. Attack that knight. Where does it go? Knight d4. is really the only good square. Knight e5 functions, I guess, but it's way too loose. Knight d4 is a lot better. And from here, you go queen to f6. Attack that knight. They don't just want to drop it back right away. c3 instead, keep the knight defended. But from here, your game's easy. Knight c6. Attack that knight. They have no way of defending, and they don't really want to back up either, so they're probably going to capture. You take back with the d-pawn. You attack f5 now with the queen and the bishop. Who is going to defend it? Literally nobody. Nobody even can. So, bishop c4 here. You capture. Let's say castles. You can long castle, and you're already much better here. Materials equal, but your position is just so much more aggressive, so much more ready to attack. And yeah, you can go queen g6, bishop h6, launch some giant attack against them, bishop d6 as well. There are so many fun ways this can go. The other accepted variation is taking with the knight on e5, and this isn't that much more different. Queen to f6 is the same move here. Attack and the knight, also defending f5 as well. Knight doesn't just want to back up right away once again, so d4 here, trying to defend, but now d6. Kicking the knight out, forcing it out, knight must drop back, and now after captures on e4, well, I can go knight c3 here, attack the pawn once, but very simply, queen to g6 here, just defending the pawn. And what does white really do here? They can try like bishop e2, trying to maybe get the bishop out here, then queen takes on g2. And you're just up a pawn now. So that doesn't quite work either. Let's say they move this bishop out, knight f6, get the pawn defended, and your position's easy here. You're going to go bishop b7, you're going to castle, you're safe, you're sound, you're going to go on a big attack likely, and you have a great game ahead of you. Next, I have the Owen's defense, which comes after white plays pawn e4, or d4, or literally anything else. The biggest advantage of this opening is you can play it against anything, and it's the move pawn b6 here. It's very similar to the modern defense with g6, but it's going to be a lot more surprising because everybody plays this, but so many less people play this. But the ideas here are extremely simple and in most ways the exact same, a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them. Let's say white here goes pawn to d4, just go e6. And you'll very commonly also hear this referred to as the e6 b6 setup because e6 b6 and your plan is going to strike in the center here with by first playing bishop b7, attacking that. And now you're going to go d5. And the point here, you put this super strong pawn supported by this pawn, the queen, the bishop, super strong pawn right in the center. And when they push up here, you can now strike in the center with c5. And this is kind of like a French defense, but a very, very interesting one. After c3, you can go knight c6. You're going to have a ton of pressure right there. Keep developing your knight, your other bishop, your queen. Everybody's going to be doing a great job. A lot of people here will also try to trade like so. And this is even better, because this showcases that you are always going to play c5, just not necessarily right away. In this case, let's say white castles here, you can move your knight out to f6. They play one scary check, but not so scary, bishop e7. You're just getting all of your pieces developed. Everybody is doing very, very great. Let's say white goes knight c3, tries to attack d5, but it's futile. Just castle, bishop g5. White just keeps developing pieces, but they don't really do anything. And from here, you can keep delaying. You can go like knight b to d7 first, or you can even strike in center right now, c5. And that's the idea. White now has just this pawn on d4, not super well defended, not super doing that great. And if they try trading here, you take back, and now you have the whole center. You can go d4 here. Your bishop is just going to open wide up. You might even be able to go on some insane attack. And yeah, this opening is super fun. Next, I have the modern Scandinavian defense, which comes after white goes pawn to e4. You respond pawn to d5, normal Scandinavian. White captures. And here, instead of taking right away with the queen, you play knight out to f6 first, attacking the pawn like so, and this opening is extremely strong. First off, what if white tries to get greedy here? Because it kind of looks like Gambit because they can hold on to the pawn, c4 here. But now we get into something called the Icelandic Palm Gambit by playing pawn to e6 here, and we get this trade. This Gambit is insanely ridiculous. I cannot show you in just a few minutes how strong this Gambit is. There are so many traps and such. Most common move here is pawn to d4, because otherwise if they play knight to f3, you can go c5. Oh my god, they have the most disastrous positional hole the world has ever seen. They have to go like probably d3. Oh my god, I hate to even look at that. But if they play d4 here and get rid of that right away, you play bishop e4 check, bishop d2 here, like blocking, attacking our bishop, queen e7. Defending the bishop, so many just delicious ideas here with various discoveries, queen check like so, bishop moves. Yeah, there's many successful ways this can go. There's also various gambits where you can even, not in this position exactly, but you can let white take again on f7. Those can get super insane, and yet they're objectively still great as well. What else can white try here if they don't get greedy? Not really much else. They can try knight c3 here. Like doing this, just defending with the knight. But after this trade, captures, this is Scandinavian, but objectively improved. The only difference is the knights are off the board, and the only reason the queen takes on d5 Scandinavian is even bad in the first place is because knight attacks the queen. With that gone, this is just a superior game. You're simply better here. And their most mainline best option is probably pawn to d4, but after like knight takes and pawn c4, just back right up. Just back right up, and you're doing fine here, and now you can just develop normally. This is a pretty good game, and yeah, you're still doing great. And lastly, I have the old Benoni defense, which unlike the other openings, isn't against e4, but rather pawn to d4, and here, the move is c5. You immediately put pressure on them. I don't know why this is not more played, to be honest. It is really strong, and yet like so few people actually play it. First off, it kind of looks like a gambit. It's not really, because capturing is just a bad move. You play e6 here, attacking the pawn. White either has to give the pawn back right away, at which point you just have a good position, go d5, you're doing well, or they can try to hang on with b4, which is just terrible. This can really go bad for them quick. a5, undermining them, and there are so many bad ways it can go. Most simply though, if they try a3, capture, that's a free rook. So you win there. If they try c3 and try to get away from that problem, queen f6, the rook is trapped. And yeah, they're just gonna lose there. There's nothing there for them. Instead, what can they try? They have some miscellaneous moves, like the c4 is a move here, but it's not very good. Capture, queen takes, knight c6, attack the queen, you're doing well. Not really much to talk about there. Their best option and most popular is d5, but this is actually my favorite variation of play. It's so much fun. You play e6, attack the pawn. They can't capture you because f takes back. You're going to go d5, take the whole center. You're doing great. c4 is the main move here, and we get trade, capture, d6. Gluing the pawn right there, and the point is now you can play pawn g6. And you're going to move your bishop out to g7. Your queen can also come out. It can double team the knight. There's even variations where from here you play knight to f6 and knight e4 to even more just completely dominate that knight. And other than that, your position is pretty easy, solid, develop. This knight will always like to head to e5, and you are doing fantastic. Like and subscribe. Have a great day. I will see you next time.